Joining us now to lend her voice to what she believes is a gender angle to the fight against COVID-19 that is not being addressed, which is female health workers in the space, is human rights activist Ndi Kato. Well, welcome to the morning show, Ndi. Thank you very much for joining us. I want to get straight into the meat and bones of all of this. Why or how do you feel female health workers are not being properly addressed in this fight against COVID-19?
Well, for one, in the first place, there's no consideration for the gender angle to the COVID-19 response. The Ministry of Women Affairs has been completely left out of COVID-19 response. And from what I hear, some people in power are saying, oh, this is not a gender thing, it's a Nigerian thing. But there are several angles to these things. You are going to look at persons living with disability. You're going to look at the case for women. I was reading a report yesterday in preparation for one of our analysis that Black women, especially in the United States, Black women are more affected by this. Of course, in the larger picture, that means that even Black women here, everywhere, are more affected by this because of pre-existing conditions from race and gender implications. Now, if you narrow that down to female health workers, can you hear me?
Yes.
If you narrow that down to female health workers, if you look at the health sectors, the health sector in Nigeria, there are actually more female people there, more women there. Why? A lot of nurses, the nurse to doctor ratio. And then, of course, women are becoming doctors more and more these days. This is an area that women are caregivers. Women work actively in this space. In terms of even out of being health professional caregivers, women are in this space. And then little to no consideration made. We're still looking at the angles of proper PPE, proper protective garments for health workers. That is not seen yet. And a lot of these angles also affect in terms of the mental health care. Women are doing this work. Women still have to take care of their families. And we're not seeing that conversation properly held in the public space, on the governance level, on any level at all. And I would trace it back again to the complete exclusion of the gender angle from COVID response in Nigeria.
And I'm wondering, what kind of conversation really would you like to have around this gender perspective to the war against COVID-19? And in what way exactly do you think it would actually help if this conversation were to be held right now?
Well, first things first for this conversation is include the Ministry of Women Affairs. That's one. Number two, there's a serious conversation on an increase in sexual and gender-based violence right now. And what is happening with that is that a lot of women are locked up in this lockdown with their abusers. They have nowhere to go to. I remember the first few days of the lockdown here in Abuja, we were running helter-skelter with Dorothy Njemaze Foundation. A young woman who had been assaulted and molested by a commissioner in Kogi State had run to Abuja. We didn't know how to get her tested. We didn't know how to get her to a hospital because, of course, first responders for sexual and gender-based violence were not included in exclusive services. And that is what's the name for it, but that is a serious issue too. So we had us running around. We didn't know where to get cars. We didn't know where to get passes to move around. A woman 2 days later was kicked out of the house by her husband in Duse. All of these issues, you're still trying to find accommodation for persons, victims and survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, and then nothing. Right now, we've learned that the FCTA has converted the Women's Center to a COVID isolation center. Now, that center, if you are looking at a gender perspective, that center actually has a section that is like a hotel, like it has very active rooms and all of that survivors could actually stay in this current situation. But because this angle is not even considered, it has been turned into an isolation center, and we have less and less places for survivors to stay, and these cases are increasing. This is important at this time. If the Ministry of Women Affairs is empowered, at this point, we actually have a lot of women that are trained at the Women's Center that can actually start helping to produce these things. Every day, women are doing these trainings. Every day, women are doing these trainings, learning to sew, and right now, we need that help. Right now, we need that help. Women are not even empowered to help. And so some of these issues come up and there is nothing to do. We don't know what to say. We have a partnership with the National Human Rights Commission. That is my organization. And we're trying to see how we can impede the gender angle to that. We're trying to see how we can make NAPTIP active for that. We're trying to see how we can make international organizations pay attention to that. But we cannot sublet the work of proper governance out. And right now, Ministry of Women Affairs needs to be involved in COVID response. Women have been talking about it. Women have written a letter to it. I have learned that that letter has got to the office of the Vice President, and yet we're not seeing anything. I'm calling out everybody right now, the Vice President, the SGF, Boss Mustafa. Women need to be involved in this. It is getting really critical, and we're not seeing the kind of responses we want. Even on the home front, with what is happening now, I mean, I'm a full working woman, and I crack this joke with my friends that I thought I was a mother before, but I was just a woman with kids. Right now, motherhood, yes, right now, combining motherhood, combining work, because my work has not stopped. Doing COVID response has been, for lack of a better word, and this is TV, madness. You have to work from home. You are combining a team of 50 or more people, do this full motherhood. People cannot do anything, and we have to keep working. There was a day I was prepping for TV and prepping to respond to a human rights case, and I was turning EBA right before my MacBook. I didn't know what to make of it. I don't know the amount of mental health care I will need after this, because there are kids involved. There is still the work involved. So women are combining full home duties, full job duties, all of those things, and no consideration is being put into these things, and we need to discuss it. We need to discuss it, and proper people who understand within the presidential task force what the women angle is need to be involved. And for me, that is the Ministry of Women Affairs. Under the Ministry of Women Affairs, we can have coordination from UN Women, all other NGOs, the rest of us NGOs that are working here, local and international. Organizations like NAPTIP can fall on that. But right now, we don't have that, and it's really problematic.
Indeed, what your answer just there was captivating and so raw and honest, and also heartbreaking that you say that you're unable to do the critical work you're needing to do during this unprecedented time because of what seems to be an out of sight, out of mind type of mentality, where issues to do with the girl child and the women just doesn't seem to be being brought into the forefront. And I want to ask you why you think that is. Is that a lack of women in positions of power? Is it a lack of empowering the women who are already there? Or is it just another example of women having to survive in a patriarchal society that just doesn't see them? What do you think it is?
Well, I mean, I can go on and on about the patriarchy right now, and to correct, not that you said anything particularly wrong, but we currently we are able. I mean, we are women. Creating magic out of nothing is what we know how to do. So despite the situation, we are working. Despite what is happening, we're still out there, still pulling the strings, still getting things done, still getting harassed in the process of getting things done, despite the fact that we have passes. Like I mentioned Dorothy Njomanze a few minutes ago. Dorothy Njomanze had her pass, and they still harassed her. They said, "What you concern them with women's rights for this time?" You know. But we are still out there. We get harassed. We still go. We still get these things done. But back to the conversation on the governance issue. There are not enough women in power. Of course, prior to COVID coming and interrupting everything, we were fighting for increased participation of women in politics towards government's delivery of inclusive services. And this is that government's delivery of inclusive services we are saying. There are not enough women in cabinet, of course. And out of the women in cabinet, very few are being put in positions that they can do something in the presidential task force. And it is realizing that, look, they will tell us women get a seat on the table, get a seat at the table. And even when few women are able to get that seat at the table, when key decisions are being made, they're excluded. I know the efforts women leaders in this government and in other places have made towards getting more inclusion for women in COVID-19 response. And I feel like this is a no-brainer, that every aspect of society should be represented in COVID-19 response. You can't make this, and let me spell it out clearly, a gerontocratic patriarchal thing. You cannot. So it's mostly old men inside there. Young people, not so much. Persons living with disability, not so much. Women, not so much. You know, human rights. It's now we're fighting to push for human rights angles into this thing, and all of these are so important. All of these are so important. If there's anything that COVID will teach us right now, is that, look, you have to look at all angles of the society, because this virus is actually affecting some classes of people, and it's time to look at those that, you know, can get things done right now and should be able to move around better and have higher immunity to that. And that is actually young people who have been getting this kind of caregiver work done properly.
Okay.
Well, as we can hear, Ndi Kato has been explaining the issues and the difficulties women have been facing during this COVID-19 outbreak. She says that once again, it is female healthcare workers who haven't been included in the conversation. I think we still have Ndi with us. If you could continue finishing on your point there.
Well, I was saying that if there's anything that points to women being better equipped to actually deal with, leadership in this time, that is provide the needed leadership for solutions during COVID-19, is countries that are run by women who actually have better data or better results in fighting COVID-19. And I pointed to examples of Germany and New Zealand. So Nigeria needs to sit up with this. We cannot be pointing, the gerontocratic population are the population also most at danger in terms of COVID-19. So I think that is counterproductive, that you are the one most likely to die if you're out here on the front line, but you are insisting to be the ones to lead COVID response.
Right.
It is totally counterproductive. We need to look at solutions towards Nigeria. When people are talking, when Melinda Gates and the likes are talking, it is not that they are foreboding evil, but that from statistics, from data, from previous work done, they can see the possibilities for Africa, and it's looking green. So it's not time for us to maintain this system that leads to oppression and all of that. Like, this is all out survival, and women need to be involved.
So, Ndi, what are the solutions that you are preferring? I mean, it's very obvious, both at the global, level and, domestically here in Nigeria. A lot of women are facing domestic violence, and then there's the economic issue. Exactly what would you be telling women now at this time to help themselves?
Very briefly.
Very briefly.
Well, if you live under this kind of oppression all your life, you've been hearing about how to help yourself. So I think for now, let's leave that for women. Let's look at authorities, because what exactly can women do? Will women jump out of the house and sleep in the bush?
Okay. All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Ndi Kato, talking to us about the gender perspective to the COVID-19 fight.